and we may we may we may have folks come in, through it as well. And we'll just keep going through. But I'm also just so happy to be in the same virtual room with all of our residents. What an amazing thing. One day in a real physical room with clams and mole and all delicious things at the table.
That would be awesome.
Hands
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good diet.
Mole clams. I guess maybe not in the same dish, but it could happen. Um,
Celery,
okay,
salt,
so
mayonnaise.
celery salt mayonnaise, yes.
Is
I
is
might.
my lighting too dark? Because it's like 11:30 now here, and I'm like
No, it's very, very vibey. I
in
like
my,
it.
in
Yeah.
my living room and like just trying to like be wide awake till like 4 a.m. So kind of just want to. My window's open. It's
No,
like it's a hot in England. It's like there's no AC, there's no air, and it just started getting warm here. So now it's like
I like.
actually like yeah. So now it's like actually no AC. Yeah. So it's like actually hot now. So my windows
Okay.
are open. So yeah. And then there's like a whole view. So but anyways, yeah. That's I just yeah.
No, I like it. It's adding some
Okay.
nice color contrast to our backgrounds. Um, so yeah, we're going to talk about the tables of contents regenerative residency, uh, which all of our former residents so graciously have shown up to share some experiences and wisdom from their times at Glynwood. I put a link in the chat. I hope everyone who needs it can see it to the residency page, which has, I think most of the information anyone could need, but we wanted to just set this up to have a chance to answer any other questions that came to mind. The big sort of initial question or like details, I guess, would be that applications are open till July 1st for our fall residency, which will be in October into November. I think the dates are like the October 18th to November, whatever 3 weeks after that is, with a little bit of flexibility on each side. And the residency was started um, 2 years ago. Was it 2023? Yeah, Giada, that was your spring of 2023. As a kind of just on a lark, we had the opportunity to use Glynwood's incredible property, particularly Clove Cottage, where everyone here has since resided, um, to bring artists, writers into the work that Glynwood's already doing around regenerative agriculture, because we feel that those two things are art and culture and agriculture are intimately connected and should be in conversation and feeding each other. And we hope that that will continue. It's already grown in a way that's been so amazing to watch, from one residency in the first year to three residents and two residencies in the second year. And this year will be four residents over the course of the year. And who knows where it will go. But yeah, really excited to have all of y'all here. I think I want to start with just brief intros. If you can each, in a minute, um, sort of introduce yourself, the work you do, maybe when you were at the residency, and if there is a project that you're working on now that you're excited to share, feel free to share that as well. And I think we can just ping pong it around the room, but I will start with Jada as the inaugural resident. Jada, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for putting this together. Feels really special. And I am very humbled and honored that I was chosen for the first residency. I am a writer, multi-hyphenate in my head, but right now a writer. And my work explores a lot of themes of domesticity and proximity and landscape and Black pop culture. And the book that I'm working on edits right now is my second book, my novel, which is the book that I was working on during the residency. It is entitled Ruin's Child. Thank you. Oh, I'm sending it to Diane.
Oh yeah, we're picking people. That's smart. Thank you. Hi, thank you. This is really nice to see everyone's face and know that we all looked at the same stuff um, and cooked in the same kitchen. I'm Diane Cook. I write books. I'm a novelist or short story writer, novelist. Um, I work a lot with the natural world, people's relation to it, and also people's place on a spectrum of like animalness. Those themes that come up a lot in my work. My last book was like probably considered like climate fiction. It was imagining a world post like climate, the effects of climate change. And the book I'm working on now, which I worked on last March when I was in residence there, is it's about well, how do I say this? It's not about environmentalism necessarily, but it is a book about where people live very close to the land. It's it's sort of a historical novel where people are homesteading in Big Sur in like the turn of the century. And there's like a deep relationship with an animal presence there too. So just every chance I get, I am writing about the natural world, even if I have to like sneak it in there into like human stories. And let's go to Berette. Is that how you say? Okay.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Berette Macaulay, and I am an interdisciplinary artist and writer, and I curate as well as one of my artistic practices. I treat it as an artistic practice, I should say. And I also run a small film organization called Black Cinema Collective that screens filmmakers from around the world doing experimental or narrative works who don't have distribution but need their works to be seen. Um, I my work basically deals with transnational and transcultural identity and belonging. Um, a lot of my personal writing is in poetry, although I'm not like widely published in poetry. I do essay writing and arts writing as well, which is where most of my published work resides right now. And yeah, right now I'm working on, and I also have a practice in photography. That's my longest disciplinary practice that sort of figures into the work that I do. And right now I'm working on continuing a project called Metamorphic Return to Fusion that has different parts to it, photography, film, poetry, and sculpture. And I have one film from that project that I worked on in the residency that's making its rounds in film festivals right now. Um, and yeah, uh, and I love to cook. I'm kind of like a wannabe chef if I had another life to live. So that kitchen was like, and farm, it's just a dream. And I will ping over to Emma.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Happy to talk about Glynwood and the 3 weeks, glorious weeks that I spent there. I'm Emma Murdock. I am a fiction writer and as yet unpublished, so I'm mostly an adjunct English professor for Bard's College and Prison program. My work is at Glynwood, I worked on a series of short stories that were interlaced about a, a set of brothers. Um, and that's the project I'm working on mostly now. But my work in general is pretty obsessed with the sort of way that adolescence breaks ground when it comes to family structures and in the ways that that means like newness, but also with separation um and pain and the sort of and definitely always finding ways to put young kids just alone in a big landscape to see what kind of cycles between self and world happen when they're trying to understand their own borders. So it was great to be at Glynwood and get to sort of see the shape of each of these stories and how they come together and find their own tracks because the winter landscape there definitely was great for that. And I'll pass it to Solange.
Hi everyone, I'm Solange. I was also at Glynwood this March with Emma, and have been really daydreaming about it a lot recently. So it is really special to be back capturing fragments of that time. And yeah, I'm a writer. I'm also an organizer. While at Glynwood, I was working on and am working on a novel about the 1997 embassy bombing in Nairobi. But this summer, I've mostly been working on an essay that maybe might be a longer chapbook or something about pain. So I guess thematically, I write a lot about suffering, and the ways through that, and where people meet systems, and a lot about mothers and inheritance as well. And I'll pass it to andriniki, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced.
I know that's great. Yeah. Well, you talked about writing about suffering. I write about kind of like alchemy or kind of alchemy of suffering through like autofiction. And I'm sorry, I'm still concerned about the lighting, but I hope it's okay. But okay, cool. Um, I published a book of poems a couple years ago, and that's what kind of brought me back to London. It's of Black trans experience, which my writing kind of always stems from. The novel I'm writing is mostly lent from like travel experiences and time travel through like Black vampires. And it follows along different places I've been, like Iceland and New York and California. And so that's what I've been working on. And I kind of like delved back into it a bit, or kind of pushed through a big sprint when I was at Glenwood last year. Oh my gosh, time. Was it last year? Yes, last year. And that was really great, regenerative place for me to write. I kind of just bursted through after 3 weeks of just kind of having the open space to just kind of think. And Glenwood is really this gorgeous like nature, which I hadn't really experienced in that way in New York, especially even as a New Yorker. So I was really appreciative for that. And but yeah, so that's what I've been working on. Yeah, I forget if that was a question. Sorry, it's the
That was
time
perfect.
11 o'clock.
Everyone was perfect. Thank you so much. Um, so if any of the attendees, Sherry, Colin, Jeffrey, Stasia, have specific questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Let us know. I've heard a few like references already to y'all's experience at Glenwood, uh, tending towards the positive, which is great. But I guess I want to start with um, what's turned up as the last question on our list, but feels like an interesting one to maybe draw out some comparisons. Like if you had been to other residencies before Glenwood, and or if you haven't, I think this could still apply. Like what about the tables of contents residency experience felt different, notably different maybe than other residencies you had been to, and or like was different in a way, I guess, that supported your work from the ways in which you're, maybe are used to working or writing. And I don't want to force anyone to the stage here, but maybe I will. Um, Diane, you're in the center of my screen. Do you mind if I ask you to share,
Me?
I mean, any thoughts? Yeah, any
Yeah,
thoughts you
yeah.
have about that? And also,
Um,
not everyone doesn't feel like we don't need everyone to answer every question, but if there is, something you're feeling like called to share, please jump on in a moment of pause.
yeah. I had done a lot of residencies at a certain point in my life, before Glynwood. And Glynwood, I hadn't been to one in a really long time when I went to Glynwood. And one of the things that so I've done all kinds, like the ones where they'll like do everything for you, feed you, and all you have to do is work. And then other ones where it's basically like, here's a house, do whatever you want, or a room or a studio. And one of the things I really loved about Glynwood is that um, it wasn't, we were in a place that had its own identity and ethos and work to do, and we were an addition to that and not the focus. And I don't know, there was something really nice about that and a bit liberating, because sometimes when you go to residency it's just like, here I am, and the whole reason I'm here is to do this thing, and this whole place exists for me to do this thing. And this like kind of, you know it gave me a little perspective, being at Glynwood and watching, like knowing that like across the road in the middle of the night they were like birthing lambs. You know what I mean? Like there was just like so much happening around you, even in this quiet place. Um, and I really, really appreciated that. And the other thing is like it's in the middle of this state park, and it had more, even though I've been to ones like out west and you'd think in places that are rugged, this was the only place where I felt completely enveloped in nature, and where I
Mm,
could just walk out my door and be pretty like kind of isolated and just kind of disappear into the woods for a while. And it was really special for me.
mm. Thanks. Yeah, Barrett.
Um, well, the way you just spoke just now, Dan, was quite transportive back into time there, because that's kind of what stood out for me too. I've done many residencies, and in different parts of the country and just different structures, like just like what you're saying, where you're completely cared for with all of the stuff and you don't have to do anything, or others where it's quite transactive and you have to sort of deliver in exchange for this honor and privilege. And or isolated ones. And this one was sort of, I felt a wonderful mix of having care and having attendance, where, we had like food provided for us, and what that food was really important. There wasn't a distance between, oh, we got this food from an organic farm. You were actually at the place where the food came from, where all the fresh produce came from, where you can walk by and see all of those, rows of food being grown, and you can meet the people who are attending to that, who are harvesting the food with the farm store there. It was but it's not about you at all. You're a guest, and but you're not an intruding guest. And so there was
Mm,
this really wonderful balance in being welcomed into a place, but having absolutely no pressure placed on you. For you to participate, for you to ask questions, learn more about the land, but also know that nothing was going to stop just because you were there. You still have a modicum of responsibility to yourself. And so you kind of encounter yourself in a different way. That's what I felt like. I encountered myself in a different way, because of how it was set up, that allowed for a different kind of journaling, personal journaling, and a different kind of silence, that allowed for work to emerge that I didn't expect. I had
mm,
plans for what I was going to do, and I ended up doing completely different things that actually served my intentions better. Um, and I think it was because of how much quietude there was and how romantic it was. It's like the place is covered in fireflies every night. And I'm like, come on, and it also feels like you're in another world. You're really quite cut off from the rest of the world in how what's the word I'm looking for? Self-sufficient this farm is, and how committed everybody was to it.
Mm,
I felt like I learned a lot about what care for land is, what responsibility and custodianship is to land, because of how everybody worked in that space, in that vast space. And so that also fed the work as well, um,
mm,
and, and fed those self encounters of, what kind of environment you want to be in or work towards or support as an artist
mhm.
writer. So that was quite striking.
I can add
Yeah.
something as well. My experience, I got to room with the director of agriculture at Glynwood for 1 week before my 2 other weeks, which were solo. And I think in thinking about, I love everything that you're both saying, that it really speaks to me because I've never seen a cow in real life before. I had never seen it at that time, or a lot of these animals. And I got to witness the birthing of a lamb and all of these things that I've never really thought about or been exposed to. Um, and Laura helped me to think about like the soil and helped me to think about the earth and all of these things that I mean, she's brilliant. And I just had no idea about like all you can know from soil. Like there are things that you can just register based on like the layers of it and what has happened there in the land and what people were eating and what people were, consuming. So it's just, there's so much, it opened up such possibility and understanding for me about how connected we are to everything, to nature. And it really helped me to think about my work in a different way as well. And it also, again, that solitude and the quiet and the isolation of it and being there alone for some time, um, it it really allowed me to like not even think about like producing. It's just like sitting with things, reading. I bought like a stack of books, um, sitting with things, sitting with my thoughts, sitting with ideas, listening to music, cooking this wonderful produce and products that we were allotted. And so it was more than just thinking about um, in the other residency that I've done since, which there is some competition element or some pressure, which I don't care about it at all, but I could see that other people were engaging in that. And there isn't any of that. And it's more about, for me, it was about just centering myself and just sitting in that quiet and not being afraid of it in a way. And it was really quite helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
I mean, I
found
feel
I
like those are
found
great.
that
Okay. No, please,
yeah,
Andriniki. Yeah.
that was a huge part that I was really grateful for because I didn't really realize until I was at Glenwood how much nature was important to me in that way. Because I hadn't really, yeah, I had like Iceland has been the place like when I was there, it was like that was the kind of closest because on Glenwood there's the lake, which is like just that immediate access to water in a certain way I hadn't experienced before, so that felt really special. And I feel like it helped me kind of bring nature into my writing, which yeah, that was a really great surprise I wasn't expecting. So that was
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you're right up against so many different versions of it, from the lake to the barn to the fort to the state park. Like there's a lot of different
And
versions of.
and seeing the lambs was really, really special. Yeah. And the
Everyone loves the
sheep and
lambs.
yeah, I got to hang out with a baby lamb, which was really, yeah, that was really special. And also, yeah, just I guess, yeah, the food aspect of Glenwood, it just felt really intentional and cared for. Um, and it was really special to feel like my work was valued and seen in that way. Um, and it felt like a big turning point in that way. And so that was something I was really appreciative of and it gave me the space to process and write and to take a step back and just kind of let the work breathe. And other residencies I've gone to, have been kind of similar or like similar. Luckily, that was my second residency. So I don't most my other residency was with one other person in France, which is really special too, but it was more of like a remote trip. So this was my second residency. And I know I've heard that, yeah, residencies can be like there's a lot of like the larger residencies with a lot of like a bigger cohort hasn't really appealed to me as much. So this felt special in that way too.
Hmm.
Um, and having someone else in the house, having Diane there was really helpful for me too, of just like being able to like bounce ideas off someone or just like kind of like in a way that was like also like, yeah, just helpful and just
Hmm. Yeah, I mean that was one question on our list too. I feel like we've kind of like finding our way naturally into some of them. We've also heard a little bit about what sort of things folks worked on, but also the things that were maybe done aside from work or that the space allowed. Um, I know Emma, you talked about that at the beginning. I heard that in some other answers. If there are other sort of notes about what you ended up working on or how you end up spending your time, because I think like one of the things we think about is it doesn't have, framing it as just a place to work on something is it can be that, it can be many more things than that. And I think almost everyone brought a lot of books, which as well. Um, but yeah, to sort of maybe I sort of offer up two other prompts, and Andriniki, you open this up too. Um, if there was anything any ways in which you spent your time that you feel like you'd want to share, whether that's being surprised by what you end up working on or other ways that you pass days there, I think that would be great to hear. And also what it was like, your experience, everyone ended up being with, sharing Clove with someone else. And Giada, as our first resident, it was initially, we're like, let's do this with one person. And it became the case that you kind of had a dual experience. Like you got a week with a roommate and then a couple of weeks without. And actually, based on your feedback, um, we felt that having two folks there at a time would be the way to move forward. But yeah, how the experience for everyone else was of spending time and sharing the space with another artist in the house, um, both in ways that were nice and anything that might have been sort of like unexpected or like um, for folks who are like, what would that be like? Any feedback that might fill out the picture a little bit. I mean, Emma and Solange, I think you all certainly knew each other the best of anyone who spent time there together. We talk a little bit about what you're working on or what that time together was like.
I was joking that Em and I kind of wore matching outfits to this, if that could be a clue into the ways we really synced up during that time. But yeah, Em and I coincidentally knew each other before. We share a very close loved one. And this was, I think, maybe the first time we've spent or was the first time we had spent one-on-one time with each other. And it did, help to have some familiarity and just, I feel like I felt an instant amount of trust and safety within the space. And Emma, and maybe they'll talk about this, had some really beautiful things to say about the way that food in particular opened up a kind of intimacy that also allowed for really deep creative trust and exploration with each other. And I think
Mm.
in general, there was such a strong, like I felt so much more encouraged to be adventurous, not just on the farm. Like it is always just more fun to explore things with the buddy, ask questions with someone else. Emma also got me into polar plunging, which I did a couple times, not nearly as many times as Emma, but yeah. And I think that really also translated into the process and the work. I felt like I just wanted I wanted to take advantage of the amount of security that I felt, not just on Glynwood and in this space, but with Emma, and take just different risks in maybe my writing or my process that I maybe wouldn't. And all the intentions that I had set going into Glynwood, like very quickly dissipated, but I think in a really great way. And yeah, one of the things that I think I've taken out is just it really re-energized both the project that I was working on and gave me so many new ideas that I feel like I'm still coming back to as sources for energy and inspiration. But yeah, I think also in just challenging myself to maybe be more brave in my writing process. Yeah, Emma, I don't know. Do you have anything you?
It's always hard to follow when you say nice things. But yeah, I think it did feel like there was I just remember this was also both me and Solange's, I think. Oh no, wait, Solange is done. It was my first residency. So I just have this strong memory as well of Evan cooking us this beautiful meal when we arrived and then kind of saying, "Okay, see you in 3 weeks. Bye." And kind of like leaving us in this house that we had only been in for a couple of hours, but was going to be ours. Um, and I think I just remember us sort of like being quite dazed for a bit. And for me, it was definitely also like a big step in terms of seeing what I would do with real time that someone else had let me take. And um and I did find that the rhythm and the like the baseline that Solange and I already had of comfort and familiarity really helped me find a living rhythm that really I found sort of started a beat for my work rhythm. Solange sort of said earlier that cooking was our sort of tether for the first week. I think we sort of we for the whole time we had pretty complementary schedules where I was sort of the first half of the day and Solange was the second half of the day in terms of when we were doing our writing and when we were sort of moving around the house. But then at the end of every day, one of us would cook for both of us and we would come to the kitchen and talk. And I think I think I said this during our closing reading, but that there was something in like making something for each other that I think really helped me feel like excited and ready to share work when we got to it later in the second half of the
Mm.
sea. And I've also and I think also because Solange was on a later schedule, I would see them writing in the evenings, and then I would wake up and have that energy behind me in the morning. I was um when I was writing, and it always just I don't spend a lot of time, I think, with other writers in my day to day, and being around them and feeling that serious attention really does a lot for my soul. And I took a lot of inspiration from Solange's like just straightforwardness in terms of what they were there to do. And um, I've also been thinking a lot about there was a bobcat on, there is a bobcat around, and I never actually ended up seeing it, but I was thinking about it when people were talking about the work that was happening on the farm and also the animals, because I just became totally obsessed with the existence of the bobcat. We would hear the sheepdogs barking at it at night. I took a lot of hikes when there was still snow on the ground next to its prints and would get a little spooked. Um, and I think there was a real element of survival that really made an impression on me that bled into my understanding of the farm work. And I think the sort of stalking presence of the bobcat really characterized a lot of what I saw at Glynwood, I think.
It's beautiful. Barrett, can I ping over to you for a second? Because as a counterpoint to Solange and Emma already having this connection before they arrived there, you certainly had the most unexpected roommate situation of any of us, of any other residents. For background, Barrett was there in July for only summer residency in this sort of span of weeks that came to be unexpectedly available at Clove, and we're so happy because it worked out with Barrett's schedule. And we're under the impression that you'd be there alone. We were like, okay, we thought we would like, start doing this in a roommate situation, but alone would be great. And it turns out you did have a roommate who was there through Glynwood for another sort of work residency of sorts, which started out in a very unexpected way, but I think ended up, really fruitful and beautiful. We just talk a little bit about your experience, with someone you didn't know there.
First of all, real talk, thank you so much for framing that up so I don't have to like tiptoe around that initial surprise. Yeah, I was actually supposed to be in the spring and my schedule just couldn't I just wasn't able to come with my schedule and so we negotiated this other time and um and I was so looking forward to being alone in the house and then surprise someone walked in and was like, "Hi, I'm your roommate." Like, what? Um and and
Mortifying, totally.
it was
I
actually
was
for about
stricken.
24 hours I was gutted and it was mortifying. And then it was like, but we're she's nice. We're getting along and this is cool and it's like, a foodie person. Okay, let's go. So well, before I answer that, there's so many things that came up with all of you talking that I just have to like speak to that hopefully will be useful for prospective, your prospective applicants is that, whether if it's, your first time doing a residency or second time or you've done them a few times, those who've done a few, like going on a residency whether if it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, whatever, it always takes a minute to find your rhythm, like period. It just takes a minute to find your rhythm. And there are different things that can challenge it because, if you're in a really isolated, rustic one where there's no community around you and you're just in this space, it's kind of freaky, especially if you're coming from a more noisy, active life or an urban life into that. It's like, you have to calm down your flight instinct to figure out how to be in balance with that isolation. Or if you're in like a large cohort, there are a couple of residencies I've done where the cohort every month is 60 people in a large space, but like still, and that takes a while because there's this kinetic energy of, oh my God, there's so much to do here and I don't know where to start. And what I think is really a wonderful balance about Glynwood is that you are embedded in a community, in a farming community. So you're not alone, you're not isolated, but you are alone in that you are in a quiet place and nobody's going to bug you for anything. And so it's that I love how, Emma, how you put that about, that wonderful dinner you get cooked for you by Evan in the house, and then it's like, bye, all yours now, is just this wonderful setup because you're given this, you feel immediately that you're given this gift, but you're not left alone. You're not like out on the edge, and feeling potentially unsafe. Um, and so there's that I just wanted to just speak to if that's useful. But what I love too is that the cottage, just to go into logistics that might be helpful, is that the cottage is 2 floors, right? So you have this sort of spatial way of living together, but also living in your separate space when 2 people are in the cottage, which is I think also what was good for my situation with the surprise roommate, that we just sort of immediately decided, okay, we're both surprised by this because she wasn't expecting a roommate either, I think, if I recall. So we just I had already been in the house for a couple of days, so she decided she's going to take over downstairs, and then we quickly realized that we had, similar to Solange and Emma, you know, I'm not a morning person. She was a morning person. It worked out perfectly. Just like both of you, where first half of the day was when she was writing, second half of the day was when I was working. There was also that interdisciplinarity that I don't know how, Evan and Josh, how you're going to be planning this out, if you plan to put writers together, artists together, or artist writer together. In some of the residency experiences that I've had in places where writers and artists are together, which was kind of the case with my situation, I've always found that to be an emotionally intelligent and helpful thing because it's 2 different disciplines and 2 different ways of engaging each other's work. And that's one of the things that we had, even though I was writing as well. I was writing a different, she was writing, scholarship and research writing around apple cider. And I was writing poetry and editing film work. And when we'd come together to cook for each other, again, similar to Emma and Solange, there was this conviviality and this intimacy that comes out of that just pulls all your guards down. And then you don't feel as frightened or as shy to share your work. There's no competition, there's no performance, there's no public. It's just 2 people who are living together, who share meals together every day. And then it's just safe to share what you're working on. And we got to know each other really well just as human beings. And so when we shared our work, we had all of that warm context of each other to like be able to respond to each other's work and actually help each other push through blocks or push through difficulties and talk through challenges with our process. And also
Mm.
celebrate each other when we like got a chapter done or finished a poem or got through an edit, or it all of that is possible in how this residency is structured, I think, and rolling out into the extension of taking long walks. She was the one who was into swimming in the lake. I'd never swum in a lake before in my life, terrified of lakes because I still believe in a Loch Ness monster. She taught me to jump in that lake. And then I started swimming regularly because of her. She learned a lot of recipes for me. She actually wrote down a lot of recipes for me for all the stuff I was cooking because I'm like, I have someone to cook for. Yay, I can live out my fantasy of being a chef. And there's all these buildings and areas on the land that you can take advantage of. There's a wonderful old world library to go right in. We gave ourselves over to the slowness and romance of the space and took very long walks because that's available to you as well, and did picnics and there's so many different places that you can go and settle yourself into different moods of work creation. And
Mm.
that slowness allowed for that, and the company allowed for that. And each person that discovered things could share and say, you should try and do this tomorrow. I discovered, a
Mm.
little nook. And so, yeah, all of that together, I think, is what helps with the structure of this particular residency.
Yeah,
Create,
that's super helpful.
yeah,
And to expand the lens, even as you mentioned, beyond the cottage, if we haven't talked about that, there are other places on the property to not
many
just engage
places on
with
the property.
by walking, but to go and find new mental and creative space.
Yeah.
I want to keep this on the shorter side, but I think the last big question that I have is and Barrett, I think you already touched on this a little bit with the discovering these other spaces. Well, also discovering a housemate. But the question would be, is there anything you wish you'd known before you arrived to the residency that would have helped your arrival, the transition period, maybe that Berette mentioned, wish you had brought or thought of, and maybe can bring it back to Giada, Diane, andriniki to start if there's anything that comes to mind for y'all, and then circle around to make sure everyone has a chance to chime in. And if not, that's okay. But I feel like anytime you travel somewhere, it's like, oh, I wish I had blank, before this got started, or something that you discovered that now feels helpful to share with a prospective applicant or resident.
I can start. There's an ambulance. I think the one thing that I can think of that I discovered, or that I didn't know, or that I didn't expect, was I'm a very solitary person. I'm alone a lot, and I like being alone a lot. And I thought, because I initially thought that I would be there alone, I was like, this is going to be great. I got this. Like, I know how to do that. And then when similarly, I realized that I would have a roommate, even for, it was just a week. But I thought, like, oh, this is going to be kind of challenging for me, because I am socially awkward, and I don't know. I thought it would be, I thought it would be a challenge. But then, as other people are mentioning, it became such an intimate experience, cooking, sharing food. I mean, we were like, physically opposite, like in age, like a big age gap, and different experiences. And somehow, like, we found such common ground, and talked about like our family, like talks about like really intimate, vulnerable things, and learned so much from each other. And so I think the unknown of it all, it was my first residency. And it was actually really nice not to know what to expect, to go into it like very open, and to be surprised by things, to be surprised by the space, to be surprised by how much it would affect me, being in this house and being in nature. So I don't think that there's a lot. I think I was almost just surprised at how much I miss Laura when she left, and I had trouble sort of readjusting to being there alone, and then refinding that rhythm. And but I think the experience, again, really allowed me to, like, my work would not exist. I think I can say that pretty confidently. The book that I'm working on and is coming out next year, it wouldn't exist, or it would exist in a different way. And so I think just being open to all the unknown, and learning, and just going into it kind of blind, and going into it with Evan too. I mean, like learning together, and figuring certain things out together. It was like really special, and there was a lot of just not knowing. And I was surprised by how incredible it was, the experience for me with all the unknowns.
Thanks. That's great. Anyone else, anything wish you had known before arrival, or that feels it remains in your mind from your experience to share?
Like, you go.
You go, Dad. You go ahead.
I mean, I don't, this feels very like practical,
That's great.
but I wish I had like a map of trails. Because I remember, like, every day as part of what I do as I go for long walks, that's like part of my writing process. And it took me a while to realize that I could just walk out my door and down the hill a little bit and cut across into the woods and find all the trails that are like all connected. So I was like walking on the road a lot, and walking, like, for the first 2 days, kind of walking around exploring. But once I got into the woods, it was like everything like opened up. And so, I mean, whatever, like I explored and that was useful. And by exploring, I found these pathways. So it's just a matter of like, that is also valuable. But if I'd known that right away, I think it, who knows, that would have been nice, I guess.
Mm,
Um,
it's a great note.
yeah. And also I'll say, Andriniki, I'm so sorry because I'm so weirdly solitary. I have like two little kids and a spouse at home, and I'm always on caretaking mode, and I'm always cooking for people, and I'm always doing everything. And so when we met, I was just like, "You cook your food, I'm cook my food," and then we could. And so I apologize for that, but I think even in that situation, we could still come together, and we also had that same experience, I think, like finding these commonalities and eating together, even though it was like you cooked your food and I cooked my food. And I don't know, I discovered like, I could cook the way I like to eat, which I don't actually get to cook that for my family. They like their thing. And I don't know, it was like there was a lot of nice stuff happening even in my like solitary doing just for me. Like I was discovering some, I don't know, discovering something about myself, or like soothing my soul after, many,
Mhm.
many years of taking care of people.
Mm.
But anyway, Andronique, I hope that was okay that we didn't have that cooking for each other thing.
I mean, it's cool that Giada and yeah, Diana are also because I'm a very solitary person. Like I live alone right now, and I don't. Yeah, I just prefer a lot of alone time completely. It's something very important to me, and that's why this residency appealed to me so much. And so yeah, going to this space at first, it felt really intimate in this way that I wasn't really expecting. It was just like kind of like it was still like we still had separate quarters and stuff, but it at first felt a little closer than I was anticipating, but it warmed really nicely with Diane, and like we drove down together, which was nice too, which helped, and like gradually it was really nice. But we were also able, I felt like we were really communicative about just like I want to use this space, or like I wanted to like do workouts a bit, like a little bit, like but was trying to find the right space too. And like I like to listen to music out loud when I write. So we're kind of like negotiating like just different kind of like the kind of like roommate things. But it was the communication was good, and like and I would just kind of go into my own like hole a bit, and like if Diane was in the kitchen and we were talking and I was like, "Oh, I'm really struggling with this like this plot. I'm like really trying to get to like yeah, I was just like getting stuck in how to approach the task of finishing a novel, and I would just come back out and like we would talk about it, and we still had our time that was very solitary. We were able to negotiate a good amount of solitary time. And I was a bit intimidated by the nature, to be honest, at first, and the trails were kind of I never made it to the trails. Um, but but I also have not done nature in that way before, so it felt I was worried about just like ticks a bit. Um, so so that just kind of didn't make it to be something that I wanted to dive into. So, and I think if maps were there, that would be helpful too. But then also at night it was really dark. And so that kind of stuff was a little intimidating for me. So I kind of like tried to stick to just staying going out in the daytime, and being by the lake, um, and just kind of taking like walking and just that kind of stuff. But also I will say that my schedule was different then. I was also kind of working while I was there a bit. So for like maybe like a week. So I didn't have the full open time at first. So when I say working, I'm just meaning work like a day job, whatever. So that kind of took away from the element of maybe having more time to like wander out into the trails. Um, but still, even then, it was it was the right amount of nature for me. And I just did another residency in Iceland, and I don't think I would have thought to do that if it wasn't for this residency so much.
Mm,
And so I'm really appreciative in that way because it really taught me or like showed me that how much nature had meant to me in a way that I didn't really realize as a New Yorker growing up in the city. That was something I just hadn't really sought out so much. And the
mm,
way that it just kind of came to me in this way that it was like very yeah, it's the proximity of the lake house was really, really stunning. That was my favorite part. Just sitting out in the lake. I didn't swim. I like to swim. The water was very cold. Um, but maybe another time.
yeah.
But
Can
yeah, and
I?
the space,
Oh,
yeah. Sorry if I'll wrap up, but yeah, and
yeah.
just yeah, the space was yeah, the space there was a lot of there's a range of different imitation like the librarian like so I feel like there's a big range of like how to access the space in a way that feels good for you. Yeah.
Mm, hmm.
Um,
Any other wish we had known notes? Barrett?
yeah, I don't know if this is a wish. Well, let me say it all out, and some of it it'll fall where it falls. Um, the one of the things that I think that this you might have this on the application page already. Um, but one of the things that was really good is that if you want to go into town or you want to go and see other like art spaces like the Deech Project or um, there's having a car is a good thing. I didn't have a car. I took the metro up. Evan picked me up and brought me over to the farm. But even though I wasn't anticipating having a roommate, she came with a car. And so that meant a couple of times when, there were opportunities to go do, to get off the farm literally and go do other things. That was our mode of transportation. Also, I worked late at the library one night and there was a torrential downpour rainstorm and I couldn't walk back. And so
Mm,
she came and picked me up. Like so there's that wasn't so much of a I wish I'd known before because I knew that already. That was information that was provided. But it's one of those things that I think is important to say up front that if you're not a local, a Northeast local applying to this residency, that is something you should keep in mind if you might want to have that kind of movement, independence of movement for greater distances in the Hudson Valley, is to think about, whether if you're going to want to rent a car. I also
mm,
think just adding to that, it's a good idea to think about, if you like biking, if you want to bike around, that might be something that you could look into for renting bikes or bringing a bike with you. Um, I don't think I'm inventing a memory with this, but by the time I came, I did have a small map of the farm by the time I was there last July. But a map of the greater, land conservancy area, I didn't.
mm,
One thing I do wish I knew before, I knew about ticks and all of that, so I came very prepared with my candles and my, and my spray, my bug spray. Get like really good bug spray. Bring your socks if you're walking the trails because it's real. Like in the Hudson Valley, there are a lot of ticks, and you can get bitten. And so you should look into safeguarding yourself with that and pack for that. But and that's information that's available, but just to say it here for anybody who's listening to the recording. But also, I do wish that I knew that I would encounter snakes. So that I didn't know before at all. Um, and I don't know if they're around in the winter. Y'all speak up if that was the case, but certainly in the summer, they were there. There was a nest of snakes that actually was living under the house, right under the window by my roommate's room. And she discovered that by going out to the back porch, and one was slithering across the back porch. The mom, I think, was going for her babies. And that's how she figured that out. So, we were watching them every day. But like if you take walks, you might want they slither away from you. So, it's not like they're gonna attack or anything, but if you have that phobia or what have you, should, or concern, you should know that you might encounter snakes. And there's one
Yeah, I
island
wonder.
in the middle of the lake that apparently is a snake island, from what I learned.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah. I wonder if it might be more of a summer thing. I actually am not sure I've seen a
Probably,
snake at Glenwood, but
because they're
it's a good
reptiles,
note. It's
right?
a
So
good
they
note.
don't like the winter. So
Yeah.
they probably won't be around in the winter time. But yeah, but you can swim out in the lake, and you can take a boat and go rowing out on the lake, and and you're fine. But
Yeah.
it's good to just know
Yeah.
that.
Be prepared mentally. Yeah. Um, Emma or Solange, if you have anything, feel free to jump in. But I have a couple questions that we had asked in advance, and now we're in the chat, which is great. Thank you, Sherry. Yeah, the car question, Barrett, thank you for touching on that. Um, you're quite stranded in a way on the farm if you don't have a car. Um,
I do.
Biking,
I do.
even for me, is like the roads off of the Glynwood's property are pretty main roads. Cars are going quite fast in there, and there's not sort of bike lanes. So I think people do bike those roads, but it's kind of, you know, I would want to call, sort of lay out there. It's not like a casual country lane with no traffic. They're, spacious. They're not sort of like um, breakneck or like switchbacky roads around there. So driving, I think, is relatively manageable. Certainly easier than in the city. But although there are other folks on the property and at Glynwood who are so helpful and willing to help out, there's not like the capacity to kind of get rides reliably into town or to grab groceries if in between the grocery sort of deliveries that happen you want to get something else or visit something. So we definitely think a car is pretty important in order to have access off the property. And then the accessibility question, um, as I think it's Barrett, but a couple folks mentioned, the cottage is 2 floors, and I think most often how it's ended up divided up is that basically one resident kind of has their living and workspace on the top floor, and the other has their living and workspace on the bottom floor. So there is a way to structure it where stairs aren't really a requirement, although off of the sort of road of Glynwood, there are some steps down, a little bit of an uneven sort of rustic stone paved path to the house. So it's not a straight shot in. And yeah, good note, bathrooms on both floors, like one for each resident. Um, I can't recall the sturdy banister leading up to the second floor. I think there might only be one sort of halfway up that flight of stairs, and the rest is enclosed by a wall on both sides. But in any case, it's accessible in that you can live solely on the ground floor without having to access the second floor that way. And yeah, bathrooms on both floors, and of course, if you're on the first floor, you're by the kitchen as well, so you can access that and the common areas in the same way. Let's see. The bathroom upstairs has like a clawfoot tub that you have to step into. Downstairs, there's a bathtub that's lower than a clawfoot tub would be, but you do still need to step over that into the shower bath structure, shower and bath. Thank you for those. Those are great questions to have on record here for folks who want to reference it. All right. I mean, we're coming to 7:45, which I feel like is a good place to wrap this up. So much helpful information. I'm so grateful to all of you for doing this, to Barrett for I think proposing it in the first place. It was a great format for setting this up and having something that can live in posterity. Is there anything else that's on anyone's mind that you'd want to share about the residency briefly before we wrap things up?
I
No pressure.
I wanted to add, about like the dinner or the thing that you create after the residency is done. I think like that's a really wonderful celebratory thing to think about your own work, to listen to others' work, and to have your work celebrated in a way that I've never experienced before. And that was like really, really, really special. And I think that's a wonderful element that I've not seen. I mean, doesn't exist as far as I know anywhere else.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really special for us too. And it's so interesting, even just me listening to this, to have different generations of residents there as like things have shifted and hearing like slightly different experiences between each ones. And I know this residency will continue to evolve and everyone will have sort of their own version of it in some small ways. And that actually feels kind of fitting in that like this, vegetables don't grow the same every year. Things rotate and change and morph. But yeah, it feels like it's following the rhythms of the farm in that way also. Um, Great. I think we'll wrap it up here. Um, if there are other questions that come to mind for anyone who's attending or for folks who watch this in the future, you can always email us. The email is biscuits@tablesofcontents.org. Um, and we'll try to answer any questions. I already have some really great notes here to add into our standard info and some other prompts. And now wondering if there's a trail app or something that we can share with people, in addition to a map for them to access, info for the state park. And maybe Emma already knows about it.
I used all trails
Cool.
to go around. I also wanted to say it's so nice to see all the former residents. It feels like, as I guess maybe as the most recent, as part of the most recent cohort, it feels really special to see everyone and hear what came before in those rooms. And also there's that recipe book that we added to at the end, and that was just very sweet to put ourselves in conversation with you, but only we know how that so it's really nice
That's
to hear.
true. That's so true. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things every season is to go up there and flip open the recipe book and see what's been left behind. Such a nice memento and
That
through line.
recipe book is everything.
I think it's still probably 50% Barrett's recipes.
But it was just so sweet that you even have that. That was such a dream.
Were those
Such a
your
dream.
photos?
Say
I think
again?
those are your photos,
With
right?
the photos? Who put the photos in?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Oh God, it's just the most romantic thing that you did. Like it's very lovely and warm, Evan and Josh, how you set this up and how you create that meal space for us to read our work and then give us this book to, to leave behind a little bit of our joy for everyone else. Just beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say also it was really special to me just seeing my poetry just laid out on the recipe or like on the slip next to the meal and everyone just kind of
Mm,
having a little piece of it there and just like glancing at it and just at it being a part of like the whole experience of the food. And I really appreciated the kind of yeah, it felt really intentional just having us read for like 5 minutes instead of like a longer reading. It felt like very like just kind of tasting a bit and just like kind of like with the whole meal and that kind of stuff. So that I thought was really special too. And everyone was really warm and nice and on the staff and yeah, it's really special.
well, thanks for building this with us over the first few seasons. I hope there are many, many more to come. Thanks to anyone who's watching and thinking of applying. Please do. It's a very brief and easy application at this point. And yeah, I hope to see you all around a table sometime soon. Please keep in touch. I'm excited to see all the work that emerges into the world. Uh, and to think that, in some cases there will be a part of it rooted in Glynwood in a residency there. Great. We'll sign off. Thanks again. See you guys soon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Nice meeting you all.
Bye.
Bye.